Welcome to Lotus Me Bloom podcast. This is your host, Madison Ansel, and in this podcast, I talk a lot about spirituality, self-development, things I've learned, and so much more. So if you're into that type of stuff, then you found the right podcast. Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. So today's episode, it's going to be a deep one, a vulnerable one, and just something that I don't necessarily have the answers to right now, but I'm in the process of figuring that out. And I just want to share like what I've been kind of going through the last few weeks and just how I'm navigating that, and some of the answers I have found like through meditation and just like my own realizations. I've just been going through like a lot of deep breakthroughs the last couple weeks. I don't know. I don't know if it's the Mercury retrograde. I'm not sure if it was from PMSing, the full moon, all of that stuff. You know, I try to take everything into consideration, but I was diving very deep within the last week or so. And I go through these periods of my life where it feels like I just have this huge like death and rebirth. And that's what it felt like last week. Sometimes before my period, I feel very numbed out and very, I think numb is probably the best word. Apathy. Like I just don't feel happy. I don't feel sad. I just am. And I'm just going through the motions. And I know some people said that sounds like PMDD. So I don't know. Like maybe. And I have noticed like in the past, and I kind of blamed it a lot on like spirituality, because at the time I was doing a lot of like inner work at the same time. But there were times kind of before my period where I just felt very hopeless and very sad, and like just, I don't know how to explain it to you guys, but it's just this very overwhelming feeling of like things aren't going to work out for me. And essentially like it's fine because I come out of it, and I do usually have big breakthroughs during those lows in my life. I just, I'm usually good at like being positive and all that stuff. And I've told you guys, like when I am negative, I'm negative, like I still really battle with my negative thoughts, and I have lows, and some of my lows are very low. Sometimes it's very rare that happens, but sometimes I have really low lows, and I know that it's just like me evolving too and going through stuff. And I usually always come out of that low with a better understanding of like my life. And I do always feel like I up level somehow out of those lows, but I don't want to blame it on anything. I think it can be very toxic to just constantly blame like, oh, I'm just transforming. I'm just going through this death and rebirth. Like, sometimes it is just like, oh, your hormones are fucked up, So I don't like to like, I don't know, coat the problem with like butterflies and sprinkles. Like, I'm not sure, but I try to take it all into consideration. So today's episode is going to be talking about voids, trying to fill voids and comparison, and what I've been kind of dealing with. And obviously, those are the two main things that I've been just going through the last couple weeks, and just asking myself those deep questions, because you guys know, if you guys listen to any of my episodes, that I'm constantly asking myself those tough questions. Like whatever I'm sharing with you guys, I'm also doing in my own life, or I have done in my own life. And I'm constantly trying to work on myself, but also trying to find the balance of like being enough, and like knowing that I've done enough and there's nothing more for me to fix. I have a hard time balancing that, because sometimes I do find myself constantly feeling like, oh, I just have to work on this limiting belief. I just have to, let go of this and, step into this identity and all this stuff. And it's like, when is it enough, and that's something that I try to like check myself on, like, Madison, you are good with how you are right now. And so some of that was coming up for me with, I mentioned in one of my last episodes, I was talking about how, the things I want, are they actually going to bring me satisfaction? Are they actually going to bring me happiness in my life? Or am I just chasing these things that I want to fulfill a feeling? And that sentence right there really like triggered a bunch of other deep thoughts for me in that regard, because I did start to really question, like, okay, the things that I want, do I actually want them? Or is it just to like make me feel better? Or, I think a lot of us are always chasing for that feeling of when I get this, then I'll feel this, and I never want to do that to myself. And if you guys know about manifestation and law of attraction, like that's one of the number one things that holds people back in life from reaching their goals, is because they're not happy now. They're not content now. And I've touched on this in many episodes. You can be happy yet unsatisfied and still manifest things. Like that's not going to hold you back. Like you can still be happy and content but still hate your job, and while still working on like your goals, if that makes sense. But I just really started to question, like, am I doing that to myself? Are the things that I really want in life are just things I want because I feel like they're going to make me happy? And that's tough because, if you have dreams that you've had since you were a kid, and questioning if those dreams are actually like what you actually want. I know I said actually a lot there, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. Like, you think of one way like your whole life of like, this is what I need to do. If I just get to this point in my life, then I'll be so satisfied. I'll be so happy. And to question that, it kind of leaves you feeling a little lost. And I hate that word. I hate it, because there were times in my life that I genuinely was lost. I had no idea who I was and what I wanted. And I walked away from like my purpose and my mission and like the things I always dreamed about. And I was a very lost individual, and I was just going through life. And so I think for me, because I did suffer a lot with my mental health growing up, and I did like beat depression, at least that's like what I say to myself. Like I truly don't have like feelings of depression like I did. Like if I do still have those feelings, they're not here long, it's for like a week, or, I do get low, but it's not what it was. But I always kind of have that fear when I am in those really lows that it's like all gonna come back, like I'm just one step or one thought away from like letting that all back in and like being taken over by all that darkness. And it's just a thought that comes up every so often when I am in those really lows, like, oh my God, am I losing myself? Am I like going to take a huge step back and like go down this path that I thought I was over with? Like it's always kind of like a internal fear of mine that I'm going to be that person again. And so it's just something that comes up, but I know that it's just a thought, and I don't try to dive too deep into it. But when you are just like really low and in like a bad state of mind, those thoughts do come up. And so feeling lost is a feeling that I don't like feeling. And I don't feel that way right now. Like if I was to make this episode like last week, y'all, you probably would have been like, oh God, this girl, she needs help. Someone call her mom. Like you would have been like, oh, this girl really going through it. And so like I waited it out, obviously, because I didn't want to like just really come on here in the depth of my feelings, because I do see like the positive now. And I did start my period. I'm almost done with my period. So like maybe that's it too. But I see like what I needed to see. And I'm not in that low state of mind. And I don't feel lost. But in that moment of asking those deep questions, I started to feel like, maybe everything I wanted isn't what I wanted. And that can just make you feel really lost, because when you tell yourself a story, like your whole life, and then you question, like, is that what you really want? And if you guys are wondering, like, whatever I was questioning, it is what I want. I do have big goals for myself. Yes, I want to be financially free. Yes, I'd love to like pursue acting. Those things will give me a level of satisfaction. I do believe so. But there's just always this feeling like something's missing. And I've had that since God knows when. And I always thought, maybe it was because, I wasn't acting or whatever. And so I started to question that, like, okay, what if I was acting? Would I still feel this way? Like, or is this deeper? Is this deeper than that? And I just tried to keep asking and asking to try to get to the root. And I truly feel like that feeling might have been like what caused some of my depression growing up. And like I said, I always try to take everything into consideration. If you want to get into the spiritual aspect of it, one of my teachers once told me about being on mission. And it's not, better than to have a purpose. Everyone has a purpose, but like being on mission is a little bit more, what's the word? I don't want to say important. It's not important. It feels heavier. It feels like do or die. Like when you are on a mission, when you come here, and you can have multiple missions too. And I don't really know how well I believe this, because I question a lot of the shit that I was taught always. But I have always felt that way. Like I have always felt like since I was a kid, I was meant to do something so much bigger than me. Guys, like I can't even express to you like the feeling that I've always felt. And it kind of makes me emotional, like talking about it. And this is very vulnerable for me. Like I wasn't sure if I even wanted to make this episode, but since I was a kid, felt this like deep, heavy feeling like there's just so much for me that I'm not accessing, like I'm not even scraping the surface of my potential and like what I'm meant to do. And I always did feel like that was like with acting and, just that type of stuff. And like, obviously that goes deeper, like helping other people through that. And I remember praying like in 4th grade about it, like, God, like, if you could just help me. It's a feeling that I can't explain. You just have to know. And so as I was explained, that's kind of what a mission is. It's like, it does cause you very much like mental health issues, depression, if you're not living your mission. And I do kind of feel like that's accurate, because as a kid, like even growing up, I just always felt like I was supposed to be doing something so much bigger. And so I don't know what that is. I'm still trying to figure that out. But, I was finally journaling about it, because I'm trying to be better at that, trying to journal out my feelings, because that's when you get answers too. But through all these questions and me talking about it with my boyfriend, I did get clarity on some things. And sometimes just getting the clarity, it's like what clears it for you so you can like move ahead, So, I did question like, do I want these things? Do I want my podcast to be successful so I can feel like I matter? Like, am I trying to prove myself? Am I trying to prove that I'm valued because I don't feel that myself? Do I not give myself enough love? Like, am I just seeking something outside of myself? Am I seeking validation from others? And like I've always said, everything I do is with pure intentions. And I believe that. I truly don't do things for egotistical purposes, but I question myself. We all have an ego. We all want to feel loved and validation. And what I've been listening to a lot here recently too is like just the reminder of back when we were like in tribes and everything, and we needed each other to survive, you going off by yourself or being, kicked out of the tribe because you weren't liked or you did something that other people didn't approve, literally sent us into fight or flight, because then we were on our own, and it was so much harder to be on your own back when, you had to do everything yourself. So I think that also is ingrained in a lot of us. So I do question myself, like, is this something that like I just want to show that, hey guys, like, see me, look at me, value me? Because something in my past, I have felt like I wasn't good enough. And that was a huge thing for me. Like, I've talked about my self-love journey on my episodes, and I used to have no self-love. I used to not see my own value and just think I wasn't enough ever. And so I think there's always layers to this. And so maybe this is just another layer for me to work through. And maybe it's just coming back up for me to remind myself that, hey, you're good enough. And that's all that matters. How you think about yourself is all that matters. And, really giving myself that recognition, because maybe there is a part of me that, hey, I know I'm good enough. I know I'm worth more. I just want other people to see it. I want that recognition. And as a projector as well, like, that's something that, when we're in alignment, we feel recognized. And so I think that does play into it too, because when we don't feel recognized, when we don't feel seen, when we don't feel like our work or our value is being recognized or appreciated, we do feel bitter and we feel like out of alignment. So maybe that's something as well. But, I do maybe have those feelings of like, I just want people to see my value and what I bring to the table. But, with that, you need to realize, hey, like, no one else can do that but you. And so maybe this was all just like a getting back to myself of like, hey, you need to pour more love into yourself. You're not as healed as you think you are. Like, sometimes I get caught up in like thinking that, I know all the answers and I'm more healed than I think I am. And right before I started recording this podcast, I was rereading my journal from the other night, and I just got called to meditate. I got called to sit just in silence with my thoughts and find the answers within. And something that was coming up was like, the last week and a half I've been not working because we're not open because of construction. So I've been feeling really bored. Like, I've been getting a lot of shit done, like uploading videos and doing the things that I've been wanting to do. But I knew that I'm like, oh, I think this boredom feeling is me wanting to escape from something. And at first I thought, oh, it might be from like me wanting to like do the work of like make my podcast, upload my videos and all that. But it wasn't that. It was that I don't like the feeling of being alone. And that shook me, because I talk about all the time, like, I love being alone. And that was true for me at some point. Before my healing and before my spiritual awakening and all of that, I used to hate feeling alone. I used to hate being alone with myself because I didn't want to feel all the feelings. And so I did a lot of work with that before I met Michael. And I think that's one of the reasons why I met him, is because I went within and I really loved being by myself. Like, I truly loved just being alone, and I didn't have to avoid, myself anymore. So I was kind of like taken back when I got that like download that I didn't want to be by myself, because like I've been saying that. And so I've talked about a little bit how my anxiety got pretty bad the last couple years, and it's gotten better now. But I want to say 2020 is when it got really bad, and I started to become more codependent than I'd like to say. And that was a download too in my meditation before I started this podcast, was you're more codependent than you realize, because I've always been very independent, but I did see myself becoming more codependent, especially with my boyfriend, because of my anxiety. And I do have anxiety, and I realized I have anxiety when I'm alone. And what the download I got today was, because I don't feel like I can handle things on my own. I don't feel capable of dealing with things by myself. Oof. That's a hard one to swallow. And when I say dealing with things by myself, I am mainly talking about my emotions, my anxiety. I'm always worried that, like, what if I have a really bad panic attack, or like something happens to me with my health, which usually it's just anxiety when I think like, oh, I can't breathe or whatever, and no one's here. Like, that's my fear of like being alone, is like, no one's here to save me. No one's here to take care of me. And I realized like that's me feeling like I can't take care of myself. I can't regulate my own emotions. Like, I know so many different things to help my anxiety. I can deal with it. I'll be fine. And I have that fear. Like, even when I go to stores and stuff, I mean, like, I have anxiety. It is what it is. But I realize that also trickles into other parts of my life. Me not wanting to feel the feeling of I can't handle things by myself. I still live at home. That can trickle into that. I don't feel capable of owning my own place or handling my finances. That plays into so many other things. But me just like being aware of that and like unlocking that essentially is going to help me get, past this. And so I also got in this meditation was that I have this void because I'm thinking that something's missing in the first place. Now, before I go down that route, because it is kind of like the answer to everything I'm talking about, I want to kind of trail to, comparison and how I even got here, how I even got to the point of questioning what it is that is missing and why I feel like maybe there is a void. And I truly feel like comparison is like one of the biggest things that cause that in like most of our lives, because we're constantly looking around and comparing ourselves. And luckily, like growing up, I never was really that type that did compare myself to my peers like as much as I have found myself doing now. And I think it's because as I'm getting older, I thought that I would be, somewhere different in my life. Because growing up, you have all these big dreams and this image of like how your life's going to look. And by like 25, you think you're going to have it all figured out. You're going to have the house, the car, the money, all of that. And in reality, 25 and your 20s are like mostly just like trial and error and like figuring shit out. And of course, there are people that do have those things by this age. So I think that's why I like have found myself the last few years like comparing myself a little bit more to my peers and really like kind of getting sad. Like I've noticed this year especially, like because everyone at this age is doing something completely different. I've touched on this in different episodes, but there are people like me that are just kind of still figuring things out and just trying to work and, find ourselves. And then there are people that are getting married and having kids and settling down. And it's like two separate, whole different timelines. And I have friends that have children, and it's like, you compare, like, do I want that? And I question, do I want a family? And because sometimes I see myself looking at people that I maybe went to school with thinking like, oh, like they just have the perfect little family and like they have the house and, everything looks better on social media. everything does. And I've had this conversation with my mom recent of like, not everything's what it looks like. And honestly, when you find out about people's lives, you start to like really realize like, okay, like, yeah, it's not what it looks like. But still, it still does the trick sometimes, like it still gets to you because that's just what social media is. I'm sure people that watch me or, follow me on Instagram, whatever, they probably think my life is fucking perfect too. And it's far from it because I'm like, not always posting the vulnerable stuff. I do try, especially like on my podcast, but there's a lot of stuff that I don't share. And I also think like, we don't have to put all that out there. I think we should be able to choose what we do want to share and what we don't want to share. But there are some people that do things strictly to like make themselves look better and like their lives look better. And, that's kind of what social media is. It's the highlights of stuff. I mean, I post the highlights too. Like I post the fun things I did. I'm obviously not going to post like, a bunch of shitty stuff that happened. Like, because you don't want to focus on the negative. I get it. But, you never know what people are going through. But at the same time, like, it is tricky, man. And I found myself just being like, oh, they just look like they have the perfect relationship. And like, when people have a family and they're getting married, it just seems so picture perfect. And I started to realize like, maybe I want kids. And I found myself doing that, I think, because I thought that it would bring me happiness. And I never, ever, ever, like that's one of my biggest things is that I don't ever want to have children to fill a void. Never. I know that kids and bringing them into the world like fulfill purpose for a lot of people, and that it is like, just kind of your whole life. And I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready to like, I'm not ready to take care of a human. Okay. I am an aunt, and I had a lot of these realizations too while watching my nephew last week, because they do feel bigger than you because they are bigger than you. It's not just about you anymore. A child is like, you have to make sure that, you're being your best version of yourself to make sure that they, are raised to have happy thoughts and to, just believe in themselves and get along with others. And like, there's just so much that goes into raising a child that it just honestly, like sometimes I'm like, whoa, like, yeah, I don't know if I ever can. I don't know if I ever want to, because that is such a huge responsibility. And, I always think that like there's stuff that I need to work on. And I'm sure there's never really a right time to bring a kid into the world, but like, I never want to like fuck up my kids. Like that's just something that I'm very passionate about. And I there are a lot of people I feel like shouldn't have been parents. Should not have been parents, should not have brought kids into this world. And I know me compared to some people, I'd be a great parent, but I just don't feel like in my head that I'm anywhere to be a parent. And that's why I don't want children right now, at least. Because I know the responsibility. Like, that's huge. Like, working on myself and, like, my own, like, trauma, I don't ever want to pass that on to a child and them have to deal with it. And I know that, like, no matter how great your parents are, we all have, like, some type of, like, childhood trauma. But I just never want my kids to just think like, oh, mom fucked us up, or like mom passed this on to us, or I want my kids to be like the best healed version of me. I don't want them to be me at all, but you know what I mean? Like, I want them to not have trauma and like feel like something that I haven't worked through yet got passed on to them. Does that make sense? So I know the responsibility. And then also on top of all that, like, you got to keep them safe. You got to keep them fed. You got to make sure that they're like healthy. And like, that's just like a whole other layer too. And it's so much more than you. And I think some people don't think like that. That's how I think of it. And I was thinking like, maybe this is the void. I thought like, okay, while I'm rocking my nephew to sleep, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the purpose of life. Maybe us just loving each other and like just being with each other, taking care of one another, like maybe that's it. But I still felt like this void, and I was like, I don't know what that is. And like I said, I never want to have children to fill a void, because I know that's just going to fuck them up. And I saw myself like kind of like wanting a family. And I knew it was because there's a feeling there that I want from that. And I think it's a feeling that of like happiness and like fullness. And even with like relationships, people getting married, I'm not in a financial spot to get married right now, but I found myself like questioning my relationship. And that's what like social media does. It makes you question your own life and your own relationships. Yes, their relationship looks perfect, but you don't see the shitty parts of the relationship. And everyone has their problems, y'all. Me and my boyfriend are far from perfect. And I'm always trying to be the best girlfriend that I can be. And there's parts of me that like I'm healing with, attachment styles. I just learned about that a few months ago, and like my own attachment style, and like how sometimes I self-sabotage. And honestly, like what I'm trying to get at is that with like the child thing, and just really thinking like, oh yeah, love is truly like the answer. And I know that sounds so cornball and cheesy, but truly like love is like the highest vibration. And it really it's all you have at the end of the day. Love is all you have. You have your family, you have your memories, and life is short. And as I've gotten older and like losing people in my life, I have realized that like those periods of like loss in your life, when you lose someone, all you have is like memories and the love you had for someone. And that's really all that matters. You slow down and you realize like this is all we got is each other, and like life's short, and those memories mean a lot. And so what I'm getting at is that I think through all of this like turmoil I've been through, is that the comparison will make you constantly feel like there's something missing, and constantly make you feel like there is this void that you just can't fulfill. And I think so many of us are constantly trying to fill a void. I did it for years with like drinking and partying. And so many of us don't even like try to question what that feeling is that we want to feel, or what is it that we're avoiding? Like, what is the feeling we are avoiding? Are you avoiding being alone? Are you avoiding feeling of what it would feel like when, you don't have people around you and those thoughts come up? You don't want to feel those feelings of abandonment, maybe, like those are things I've had to work on. And it's not easy to do. You have to be very strong to do it, because there's so many of us that don't even work on ourselves. Like honestly, this whole week and a half of like being off, I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize this feeling was there, because I'm always busy. I don't have time to like really sit with myself and, get to the root cause of everything. And most of us don't. We're always on our phones. We're always doing something. We're always stimulated. So I think it's really important to like make that time for yourself. And that's something that like I got today in this like meditation. I never meditate, y'all. I never do. I never push on anyone. But I got like, you need to meditate. Your answers lie, or your truth lies in meditation. Your answers lie in meditation because you're not stimulated so much. And I got to like start doing it at night, like 5 minutes at least. And so I'm going to try to do that. I'll let you guys know, but that's what's going to fill that void that I can't handle things on my own. And that was my answer to that. I was like, well, how do I get over this feeling that I feel like I can't handle things on my own, or I'm not capable of doing things by my own? I got meditation, because when you meditate, you realize, oh, this is my truth. This is actually like who I am. So it's going to get me back to me. And that the void of like feeling like there's something missing is that thought of feeling like there is something missing is what's causing you to have that void. And it's causing you to feel like there's something missing because you keep thinking that there is. You keep perpetuating it. And I know that's like really deep, but it's just the thought that there is something missing, the energy of there's something missing, to make you feel like there's something missing, because truly there's nothing missing. I have come a long way, especially from my mental health days. You know, I am happy and I'm at peace, and I have a great family, a great boyfriend, and truly at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And so I need to like pour into myself by spending time with my family and like savoring those moments and giving more time to things that matter, and to like fill my cup back up and bring more love to myself. And meditating, I think, is going to really fuel that for me. I think that it's going to fill that cup or fill that void up for me, because I'm giving time to myself and I'm reminding myself of my truth, that I am whole and I am good enough. And I don't need to seek that from anyone else. I just have to like give myself time to just remember that. Remember who I am. And love is the greatest vibration. And to really pour into all of that different love that I have for myself and for my family. And just to remember, like, that's all that is. And life's short. And by doing that, I do feel like if you're listening and you're going through the same thing, it's going to get you where you want to go way quicker, because you're already fulfilled. You're already whole where you are now. You already are happy with where you're at. So then it's going to like manifest all the things you've been wanting, because you realize there's nothing outside of you. Because at the end of the day, yes, we might have goals. We might struggle with bills, but all we have is each other. You know, we don't think about money when we're on our way out of this life, you know. We don't think about, you know, just shit that doesn't matter. We think about each other, and we think about the times we had with each other, the laughs. And I think I just really had to be reminded that. And I'm glad that I was. And it was deep, though. It was a lot of deep feelings I had to work through, and like old feelings that came back up of like not feeling enough and feeling hopeless, and like things are never going to work out for me. And maybe I'm just never meant to like feel satisfied. And that's a scary feeling, to just always feel like you're always going to be chasing something. And like something that was brought to my attention with all of this too is like, I love Russ, the rapper. And he's very spiritual and very like, you know, deep in thought in those ways. And he had a podcast interview with Jay Shetty, and he was talking about like, he had all the things. He had the cars, he had, you know, the women, the fame, whatever, the money, and he still was very unsatisfied. And so that really like made me question a lot too. Like, maybe I need to like make myself feel like where I'm at is enough. because I do sometimes get in this mentality of like, it's never enough. I got to keep working on myself. I'm never going to be like where I want to be. And like, it's because of X, Y, and Z. And I'd have to fix. And like, that's childhood stuff too. Constantly feeling like, you know, you have to be perfect. And like, I suffer with perfectionism, and he very much talks about perfectionism. He has a whole song about it. And that's something I've been working through. Like, I have been trying to work and be better with like my thoughts and perfectionism, and that always feeling like there's something that needs to be fixed, and just being okay with where things are at now. So I think meditation is really going to help me with that. And I think my answers have been, you know, told to me through meditation, and that it's just love. It's to pour love back into myself and to feel love. You know, feeling love also raises your vibration to even match you to where you want to go. Yes, I still want the things that I want, and I still have goals. And I do feel like they will make me happy. And like, I feel like they still are part of like my mission and purpose in life, because I do feel like I'm meant to help a lot of people. So to sum this all up, stop comparing yourself. And I know it's really hard to do. Like, I'm still going to compare myself to people. And I think it's really difficult when you are like in your 20s, because there's just so many different variations of people in their 20s doing different things, you know, like there's different levels of success. And then there's people that are just still really struggling and trying to find themselves. And, you know, I had this idea that like my life would be like perfect in my 20s, like, which perfectionism in itself, but I just thought like, oh, you know, I'd be living my dream by 25. And honestly, like, I did a lot of healing within the last few years, and I need to give myself more grace. Like, I've come such a long way. I've changed tremendously with just like in the last year and a half. So give yourself grace. Not everything's what it seems on social media. So remember that. And if you do find yourself like wanting something or desiring something, you know, most of the time when I am comparing myself to someone, I use that as fuel. And most of the time, if I'm comparing myself, it's like to people I don't know, and like people on social media or people I follow on YouTube that like have these things and like, you know, very goal oriented in that way. I never really been the person to compare myself to my peers until like recently, within the last year or so, because I've always wanted like big things, and like, you know, people that are my age don't really have what I want in that way. But I found myself like comparing myself to them in a way of like, oh, they're 25, they're accomplishing this, and I'm not even close to this. And, you know, maybe I do want to get married and just live a simple life, but it's not like, I've never wanted that like simple, like have kids, get married, and, you know, that's it. That's never what I wanted at the end of the day. But I found myself wanting it because of a feeling I thought it would bring. And I just always am, you know, deep in my feelings a lot, because I'm a sensitive person. And what I advise, if you are like me and you are sensitive and you are trying to work on yourself, and you find yourself feeling these feelings when you're looking at people on social media and like wanting things that you don't have, maybe just ask yourself, like, what is it that I'm trying to feel? What feelings are you feeling in the moment, but also what feelings do you want to feel, and what feelings are you avoiding? And I think that if you are someone that always kind of feels like there's something missing, or like there is this void that you don't know what it is, I think it's safe to say like to try to come back to love, and to just really pour into yourself, like your self-care in that way of like really giving yourself that attention and space and love and gratitude, but also like finding that love in the small things. I think many of us, if you're very goal oriented like me, we're constantly like looking at the future and like what we need to do to get to where we want to go. And I think that's why sometimes I do get in this like fix it mindset where I'm like, I gotta keep going. And we don't ever want to like stop and smell the flowers or like just realize like you've come a long way. And that's something I've had to do here the last month too, is just to remind myself like I've come a really fucking long way, and to be happy with that. And something I like really kind of dove into too, like last year, was that I'm successful now. And success is just a word. Okay. Like everyone has their own level of what success is. You know, some people think success is having $100,000 in the bank. Some people think it's, you know, having a healthy relationship. But regardless, you have done something in your life to be proud of. And we just don't always like allow ourselves to feel like that's enough. You know, me coming a long way with my mental health is very much something to be proud of. And that is success. And, you know, the thing is like, we're never going to be satisfied if we're constantly, you know, going towards the next thing. And that's like natural. You know, when you hit 100,000 subscribers, you're going to hit 500,000 subscribers. But like, at least give yourself that moment to celebrate. You know, I always said like, oh, like when I hit 1,000 subscribers, then I'll make it. And the thing is like, that makes you happy for a little while. And then you're back to, you know, not feeling anything. And so what I'm trying to say is that the feelings that we think we're going to get from something isn't really what is going to happen. Yes, you might get that satisfaction for like a little bit, but then you're back from ground zero. And so I think it's really important to like find that love and that joy and that fulfillment within yourself, and to find peace in that, and just love the small things, and just really get clear on what's important, and have that energy when you find it filter through what you're doing, like your goals. You know, yes, that 1,000 subscribers is going to make you feel happy, but you already feel happy. You already feel at peace. It's just a result of how you already feel. You know what I'm saying? Like, you already feeling these things before things happen. It's just going to be like added goodness. You know what I'm saying? Like, stop trying to think that when you get something, it's going to provide a feeling or fill a void, because more than likely it's not. And really, at the end of the day, like, we just need to find that within ourselves. And so, you know, I don't have the answers for everyone. I don't necessarily have an answer for myself. It's still something I'm very much kind of like navigating through, but I do feel really good. And like energy wise, like with September feels great. It's September 1st when I'm recording this, but like everything feels exciting to me. Like there's something really great happening and going to happen. And I've said this before. It's just like, you have to harness that, and you have to like really take the time to be with yourself. And, you know, I feel good, and I'm happy enough to say that, you know, because last week I was so deep into my thoughts and deep into like this hopelessness and this, I don't know, this sadness, that I couldn't make a successful episode to tell you guys like, you know, it's okay, it's all great. And the thing is, it is. It's just life is ebbs and flows, and it's not always highs and lows. And I wanted to share that. I wanted to share that I get low, and that, you know, my lows are lows, and I do feel hopeless, and I do feel like sometimes, you know, just imposter syndrome too. This whole last month was honestly just like a huge deep dive, but like I was like, who am I to make episodes on shit? Like, this shit's not even helpful. What if it's like fucking just pointless? Like, what if the information I have is just stupid? And I was saying all these things and just feeling like, who am I to have a podcast to help other people? Like, I'm not helping anyone. And literally a couple days later, I had a friend reach out to me that I haven't talked to since high school, and was saying how much my podcast has helped them. And I forget that there are people that do get a lot of insightful information from my podcast. And I do have things to share and to help other people. I've had people reach out and tell me that. I think sometimes we just cling on to like the negative comments and like the negative things so badly that we just really need to refocus and remind ourselves like what's important in life, and to just fill ourselves up with love and surround ourselves up with love. And that's why I think it's so important to also like be surrounded by people that, you know, support you and love you and care about you. And just, you know, remember to like give yourself some time to have fun and to, you know, make memories, you know. And I don't want to keep trailing, but really at the end of the day, I think sometimes thinking something is missing is what's missing. Like, we already have everything within us. We have our answers. We have love. We just like, you know, are constantly programmed, honestly, to look outside ourselves. I mean, that's just how like the world is in general. And also, you know, comparison is Comparison is the thief of all joy. And it truly is. I think it's difficult not to compare ourselves, and we just have to remind ourselves that like not everything is what it seems. And when I do like start to think that, like my mom reminds me, like, Madison, like you don't know that, you don't know if that person's life is like all that great. And I'm sure so many people think the same thing about me. So there's that. I think I'm going to end this episode now. And if you guys hear any jingling, if you're listening and not watching the video, my dog's on my lap. But yeah, play with your dogs, play with your pets. Like, you could just get these moments in life that, you know, when you are in the midst of like playing with your nephew or playing with your kids, playing with your dog, like you just kind of forget about everything else, and you realize like how important and just like fulfilling that is, you know. Like, just for example, my dog hates storms, and he keeps me up all night. And the last time I usually get off my floor get off my bed and sit on the floor with him, because he doesn't want to lay on my bed, because I don't know if he thinks it's closer to the windows, I'm not sure. But I sat there and I just petted him, and it was like 3 a.m. and I was like, oh my God, this fucking is terrible. But I thought, you know, one day I might not have this, you know, chance to do this. One day, you know, pets aren't here forever. That's what I'm trying to say. And I literally had that thought while I was petting him. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. It's okay, because one day I'll miss this. And so I know that got really like deep and sad, kind of. But like, truly, life's so fucking short, y'all. Life is so short. Find happiness in the day-to-day things. And that energy will fuel into everything else you do, and things are going to come much quicker for you. But I am going to end this. I know it's a longer one. I just wanted to share with you guys kind of like what I'm going through and some of the things I feel like I have answers to now, but I'm still processing and still going through, and I'm a real person. So, you know, I want to share some vulnerable moments with you guys to show you that. But yeah, so if you want to follow me, all my social medias are linked in the show notes below, and Lotus Me Bloom, same thing. Everything's linked. I will be coming out with some like Halloween things. So if you guys want to like check that out, my website's down below as well. If you're listening, please give it a 5-star review if you liked it. And if you are on YouTube, hi, how you doing? Please leave a comment and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more podcasts, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.